Welcome into the All 32 podcast. Mike Giardi, Will Parkinson, episode number 3. Will, just going to give you a quick update on my day. I think there's a dead mouse in my garage. I can't find it. It stinks. And my dog's paw is the size of a balloon. He's got to go to the vet. So I am killing. Oh, by the way, I've already rewatched the Patriots preseason game, which was pretty wretched. So I'm having a day. How about you?
Yeah, I've gotten into arguments with Giants fans over how open Malik Neighbors was. I've had my dog try to bite my foot off. I am very much in the mood for a tequila. That'll have to wait till we're after we're done here. We're gonna do some NFC West. It's very similar to the AFC West. We'll try to keep it efficient this time, but more importantly, obviously, we want to start with what was on the field last night. We'll get to JuJu Smith-Schuster as well. Obviously, Mike kind of referenced it and his legs kind of going and leading to some drops throughout camp. Drake Maye makes his debut last night. The Giants also took on the Lions, but want to get started with Drake Maye. What were your thoughts? You were
before you do it.
I'm already jumping.
Hey, no, so we're excited. This is what we say. We want to keep it a little tighter than last time, but we're so excited to be doing this and be doing it together that we get a little ahead of ourselves. But this show, the All 32 Pod, brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of CLNS Media Network, and Game Time. Best tickets, best prices to get you in to see any event you want to see. I use them. You use them. Everybody should use them because they're that good. All right, Will, now where are we going?
We're going to Drake Maye. We're going to start with the top 3 overall pick, New England Patriots, obviously future, hopefully franchise quarterback for their sake. You were in the building last night. You've been at camp. We've been talking a lot about how he's progressed throughout camp. We obviously talked a lot about Brandon Ayuk of interest and how Ayuk might not have gone to New England yet with the uncertainty whether Maye is obviously going to become what I think obviously Patriots fans hope. What were your thoughts on Maye and only playing one series, which I think was one of the biggest takeaways?
What are we doing was my first response to it. He comes out. It was 7 plays, 6 that counted. There was a penalty as well. Through 3 passes, a screen, a check down essentially where there was already heat off the right side. He kind of made reference to the fact that he thought he could have maybe looked further downfield, but Calvin Anderson, who was it? No, it was Okorafor. Excuse me. Chuks Okorafor was playing right tackle, got beat, and he got hit when he threw the ball, so not taken to the ground, but I think he made the right decision there. Had the one ball sail on him that was down the field to Jalen Reagor in the hook curl zone about 12, 15 yards down the field. Got both hands on it. So, would have been a nice catch in those conditions. It was raining, but, ball sailed on him just a little bit. But I don't quite understand the point. I think we talked about this coming into the draft. We've talked about it since. He needs work. He needs more reps. He needs more experience. Just 2 years in college. His senior year of high school, he didn't play because of COVID. He threw 900 plus passes at North Carolina, which is a fair amount, but there obviously have been some footwork issues. There's some mechanical issues that need to be cleaned up. He's just 21 years old. And I said to myself, let's see 3-4 series from him at the very least, because he needs it. And he hasn't gotten a lot of work, if really any, with the number 1 offensive line and the number 1 unit during training camp. And I figured, all right, maybe they'll give him a little bit, but he'll also get to 2s. And Carolina wasn't playing anybody. I think they had 31 guys that were scratched in the game. And to get 1 series, what do you get out of it? Okay, he got his feet wet, but what are the teaching points from that? What do you get from the tape? And it concerns me because forget about this being a competition, which we told you it hasn't really been for the majority here of the summer, or for the entirety of the summer. But he's that far behind, or you're that concerned about fragility in front of him and his own fragility that you can't get him more reps and mess it up. I said beforehand, I wrote it's not going to be perfect, right? I'm not expecting it to be perfect. We saw CJ Stroud's first preseason game because it was in New England and it looked pretty wretched. CJ Stroud ended up going to have one of the best years a rookie quarterback has ever had. I'm not saying Drake's going to do that, but you've got to let him play a little bit. They didn't let him play, and now they've got joint practices with the Eagles this week. Well, it's 1 joint practice because that's the new trend here because they don't want to have more fights. But I wonder on Thursday night when preseason game number 2 goes, if they're not going to play the first offensive line more than a couple series, if that's the same thing for him. He's just not going to play a ton. And again, I question the wisdom of that because he needs to grow.
Yeah, there's a couple things there, and I'll keep it short on Maye just because, again, you hit on pretty much a lot of what I was going to talk about.
I was rambling.
Yeah, no, I rambled quite a bit on a lot of stuff last pod, so today's your turn. But no, I think 2 or 3, and get 7 plays. Obviously, it's better than going 3 and out, and obviously going through the game day warm up in Gillette and be able to kind of acclimate himself. Like all those things are totally fair. I just felt like one series to me, if they went down and scored a touchdown, you feel really good. You're like, wow, that was awesome. Let's get it out before, keep it there. I would have understood it a little bit more. It felt like that was a good opportunity, 2 or 3 series there. Then, preseason game number 2, do you give him a quarter and a half? Preseason game number 3, he's at a half or whatever it may be. Obviously, pretty clearly, Jacoby's going to start the year. And that's why I felt like it's not as if, and I know we use a lot of Jets and Patriots examples here, but like Zach Wilson played, a couple series, 2 or 3 series, then a quarter, then a half, and et cetera. But the Jets had to be careful with him because there was no other quarterback even on the roster for them to play when he was drafted. The Patriots have a lot of quarterbacks in that room. Some with starting experience, some obviously are rookies, which one we'll get to. But I just felt like, I don't know. There's not much to take away just because he didn't get all that many opportunities to even throw the ball. It's not like he came out, they ran 7 straight pass plays,
right.
So I'd like to see, especially these guys that need work. And if we're going to go back to this model of veteran, sit the young guy, generally speaking, you got to give them reps in the preseason. That's where they're going to get their game reps from, especially early on. And I just don't understand only 6-7 plays for him next week. It should be a lot more next time.
To your point, Mac Jones in his rookie year, and again, when Mac came out, the bill on him was obviously not super athletic, doesn't have this big arm, but of the quarterbacks that were in that draft, 5 were drafted in the first round, I believe, he was the most pro-ready. He threw 19 passes in his first preseason game, and I think it was 16 in the next one. Like, they had a joint practice situation with the Giants where Cam Newton had to enter COVID protocols because he left to go to another state to see a doctor, and that wasn't cleared. And then Mac just completely took the job then, 2 days of pretty intense practices with the Giants and got a crap ton of reps. And you're like, okay, we thought he was better. He is better. He's going to play. Obviously, that sort of spiraled out of control in years 2 and 3. But, Maye's not at the same point. But how do you get him to that point? Well, you get him to that point by playing him. And it's just – I feel like they're going slow to be safe. And at some point, you're going to have to rip the Band-Aid off and just let him do it. And what better time to rip the Band-Aid off than now? So,
he took lumps in college. It's not like he had this perfect college career. He's not used to it.
Right. I mean, their team, which is one of the reasons why he fell out of favor with some people in the league, just in terms of questions about, much better 2 years ago than he was the past year. Like the offense changed. The surrounding talent around him was vastly inferior to what it was the year prior. And there was no real answers. So the answer was, Drake, just go make a play. And so he got into some bad habits, fine. But, you got to let him – same thing. He's got bad habits. You're trying to fix them. Maybe don't try to fix them all at once, too. I wonder, if maybe they're just putting too much on his plate. Hey, we want to change your release here on some of the shorter passes. We want to work on your footwork. We want you thinking about this, that, and the other thing, which is one of the reasons I was excited to see him play in the sense that, okay, just let it rip. Once you get out there and it starts flying for real – yeah, you're being coached to do a certain thing, but sometimes the instinct takes over. And I wanted to see that because he's promised us that he's a playmaker. You and I have watched the tape in college. We know he's a playmaker. We don't get to see that here, and we didn't get to see it because, again, he got 7 snaps, 6 of them that counted. And then Joe Milton is afforded an opportunity where, it's later. It's against the guys that aren't going to make the team. They're going to be working at Lowe's or driving for an Amazon truck. No disrespect to any of those things, but it's that's where those guys are headed. This is their football journey is about to end in a month. But he got leash and he got to run around and he got to make plays. And it was the most predictable thing ever that Joe Milton at 6'5", 240 pounds with a cannon for an arm and a 4.5 40 speed was going to go make some plays. And he did. He ended up essentially stealing the show, which, look, like I said, it would have been nice to see Maye afforded the same opportunity just to sort of get some of that rust off, to get some of that playmaking vibe going, and to get some confidence going forward.
Yeah, look, I think Joe Milton's a guy that, NFL Twitter is going to be infatuated with. The preseason clips. He is the ultimate pro day, preseason all-star game type of guy. The one issue I sense with Milton, and I think the accuracy and the inconsistency, and honestly the lateral movement with Joe Milton's always been an issue. So did anything in the change last night? No, of course not. But the one thing I am excited to see with Milton going forward is can he establish himself as a high ceiling, low floor backup?
Yep.
If last night was any indication, maybe that's the case. But I don't want to get too excited about it. Again, the touchdown play is nice. The scramble is nice. He's at best the third string quarterback with Bailey Zappi at for the rest of the year, and you go from there. So it's nice. It's exciting. I just feel like everyone always overreacts to a lot of this stuff. And to me, the best reaction is like, I'm good. I'm glad Joe Milton has the athletic ability we all saw, at points. But again, to get overly excited about this and think, but the Patriots found a gem. Like, saw some Joe Milton's a stud. Let's temper the expectations, my friends.
And Mayo said it post game. He said, it was really good to see him run around out there. It was, confidence booster for him for sure. But he said, let's not forget, this is just one piece of the larger puzzle. You have to string together days over and over and over again. You have to continue to improve. And I will say the one thing, and I wrote about it in our weekend notes column at Boston Sports Journal, is the one thing that got me intrigued was I haven't felt like I've seen him play quarterback since he's been here. They've sort of they're giving him more of the read option stuff than Drake Maye or any other quarterbacks are running when he's in there. He's obviously not got a ton of reps, especially as camp has gone along. Certainly refining Brissett and giving Maye a good amount of practice reps. But the touchdown pass was a show of quarterback play where, again, he froze the safety with his eyes. They had two stick routes, two double moves on the outside. He looked through the stick route, saw that Jackson was running free down the sidelines and threw a perfect ball. He was wide open. I don't know what the corner was thinking there with the way they were playing coverage to begin with, but that was at least okay, it's in your bag. But now this has been the talk about him all along, right? Okay, we see moments where he looks like, oh, wow, but you have to consistently do it. And he hasn't consistently proven in 6 years in college that he is a thinking man's quarterback at that point. Not to say it's not in there. I think, again, we saw a point. Now build off it. Joe Milton. You mentioned the JuJu Smith-Schuster thing. Dude, it was inevitable. Can't run. And because of that, he started dropping passes. They're eating a fair amount of money here, but they're one of the teams that have the most amount of cap space. So it's not certainly something that's going to ruin them doing anything if they want to during the course of the year.
Yeah, look, I think the only thing really to touch on JuJu, we can touch on the Lions, Giants quickly, but the only thing with JuJu it sucks, man. He's a guy who had this great start to his career, had a really great college career, and it was really important for the Chiefs a couple of years ago. But he's come over to New England. Kind of a lot of people were confused why his market wasn't bigger coming from the Chiefs, and we find out pretty quickly here is the knees are pretty shot, and he's got and it's unfortunate. You feel bad for him. He's still somewhat of a young dude.
27 years old.
He's 27 years old, right? It's he feels like he's been in the league forever. But at the end of the day, the Patriots probably said he's just going to he's going to end up taking reps from guys we need to get real development out of, and we'll take the cap hit. This is what happens when you're in a situation he wasn't going to play a lot. And if you're JuJu, hey, maybe you get a chance to go back to Kansas City and, you're wide receiver 5 there, but Mahomes trusts you to make some plays once in a while down the stretch. So, unfortunate it didn't work out for both sides, but it felt like JuJu's body's kind of just failed him the last couple of years, and it's obviously unfortunate. But I guess there's not too much to add there. The one thing
go ahead.
I was going to say we can transition to Giants Lions quickly. There's not too much to talk about there, but there's a few things I want to quickly highlight.
Yeah, I think the big thing, and obviously I was at the game last night with the Patriots in Carolina, so I'm not watching the Giants game, but I'm following Giants Twitter, and Malik Neighbors, as he has been since the moment he walked in the door there, has been a very popular man, and there's a lot of oohing and ahhing about what he was. I think I saw a tweet early from one of the Giants beat reporters, he's been open twice downfield and they haven't thrown it to him. I know you went back and kind of took a look at it. What is your read on Malik Neighbors and what happened last night?
Yeah, there's a couple of things, just kind of quick hitters from that game. Tommy DeVito's getting a lot of praise. He's a big name last year. He still won 8 of 15. It's not like he didn't blow the doors off anybody. WFAN today said he should be the starter. It is what it is. Drew Lock really struggled and ended up getting hurt. But he's a guy that, they probably thought, DeVito's a popular name here, and he'll always kind of be that Mike White type of cult hero. Bailey Zappi at points last year where, they're not happy with the starter and the backup's always popular until they play. So not too much there. In terms of the Lions, no one really of consequence, I would say, played. Hendon Hooker got his first action we got to see, which was really nice. He's a guy actually out of Tennessee who teams really did like coming out. And so he'll be an interesting one to follow. Can he learn behind Goff and potentially develop, with the bad knee injury there? Eric Gray made one of the nastiest moves you'll see. The juke move, he hit for a touchdown, was beautiful, scored twice. Other than that, there wasn't too much. You got some Allen Robinson reps in the preseason week 1, which
he might be headed the same way as JuJu.
He's on the JuJu track, unfortunately. Other than that, not too much. You mentioned Neighbors. Look, I think he's extremely dynamic. I think he's going to be awesome as a rookie. There's going to be some electrifying moments. We're going to get some forms of, young Odell in terms of just this captivating a fan base of a team that who knows how good they're going to be. The Giants are probably more likely than not going to be bad. But if there's a chance they can end up being somewhat competitive. The two plays that they looked at, Nate Tice did a great breakdown. So if you don't follow Nate, I'm sure people do. Nate's awesome, if they don't, Nate's awesome. Should give him a follow. If not, did a breakdown of just like two kind of cover 2 hole shots that the safety's standing right there. And if they get thrown that ball and DeVito doesn't exactly have, this big arm, even a Drew Lock, Drew Lock's got a big arm in a sense, but you could old NFL Malik Neighbors leaving on a stretcher in those. And this isn't Madden. And there's plays where he's going to look open where he's really not. And then there's plays where he's not going to look open. He's going to make this insane play. So I don't look at it as a bad thing for Neighbors. I love the confidence. Day 1, walking in his first game, he's running basically a route to kind of take the defense, take guys out of the defense, and he's calling for the ball. That's awesome in a sense. I do just wonder, and again, I don't even think it's necessarily a negative, but it's week 3. The Giants are 0-2. He's not gotten quite the amount of targets he wants. Daniel Jones, there's rufflings in the papers, et cetera. How does Daniel Jones handle just kind of Malik Neighbors and what he's going to be wanting in terms of demanding the football? I love it, but at the same time, just something to keep a little bit of an eye on. Yeah,
I say the same thing with how Brian Dable's going to handle it. And you saw in the behind the scenes stuff, when they did the Hard Knocks, which I thought was outstanding. You're a dog, but how do you deal with losing? How do you deal with not getting the ball? And he's like, it's not, that's not easy for me. It's not easy for a lot of those guys. He thinks he's the best guy on the field, and that's great to have that confidence. And he could very well be one of those guys on a regular basis. But you have to be able to sort of fit into the team structure and make it work, especially when you don't have a resume yet. Your resume is in college. This is a different league. It's a whole different setup. And it's not getting the quarterback, keeping Daniel Jones, rolling with Daniel. All right, we got him the weapon. Now Daniel's got to manage the weapon, and so does Brian Dable, so that they get the best out of him, but also don't allow him to sort of become a problem. Because I think Brian's seat's probably a little bit hot this year, just based on how last year went, even though 2 years ago he's coach of the year and they're in the playoffs and won a playoff game. So that's just
you mean the Dak and Bill Belichick led Giants next year is not what you're looking forward to?
Well, you may be. We have a feeling that's if Belichick doesn't end up in Philadelphia, where there's that great story at ESPN about the relationship between Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts and how they kind of let Sirianni twist in the wind while they considered Belichick the week after the season ended. And then, of course, you had Jalen Hurts calling Wink Martindale before the playoff game saying, how'd you guys defend us? What are we not doing? You're not running the ball. I'm not worried about you guys running the ball.
No pushes.
Yeah, that was something. All right, let's take a quick break, come back, and then we're going to get to the NFC West. Will, you love in the summertime. I know you. You love to go to Yankees games. So I'm not going to hold it against you. It's a nice park. The team I can live without, but whatever. You're that guy. Who do you use? Do you use anybody in particular when you need your tickets and you want to find that best seat? Maybe the day of. You're like, oh, man, I got time. I'm going to go to a game tonight. It's beautiful out. Me and the girl, we're going to go to the game.
No, for me right now, it's Game Time app. It's incredibly easy to use, incredibly efficient. You find some of the best seats and some of the best deals, on the market for whether you're going to Yankees, Red Sox, or any type of sport.
Yeah, it's funny. My daughter keeps saying, when are we going to a game? When are we going to a game? I'm like, well, let me get the app. We put the app, we go, bam, we're done. It's so simple. It's so easy. The interface is just fantastic. You want to use that. GameTime.co. Last minute deals. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you need. GameTime's got it.
Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets this season with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
We're back. Giardi Parkinson, All 32 Podcast, Episode 3, NFC West preview. And we're going to start with the big dogs, right? The team that was within a whisker of winning a Super Bowl yet again. Kyle Shanahan's San Francisco 49ers, 12-5 last year. Number one in offensive DVOA, even with Brock Purdy, although now I think we can see Brock Purdy pretty good for that system. Fourth overall in defensive DVOA. I want to actually start on the defensive side, Will, because they lost some talent, including some beef inside with Eric Armstead, who I know was hurt last year at points, but gave them 500-plus snaps. And I think he had 30-something pressures, like some really productive snaps. They're trying to go with like a by committee, if you will. Gross Matos, Malik Collins, Leonard Floyd coming off the edge to sort of make up for some of the absence of Armstead. And then Drake Greenlaw, of course, tore the Achilles in the Super Bowl. I mean, that was ridiculous that happened. He's expected to be back at some point this year, but you have to wonder if he'll be the same guy, at least in year one, as he was before the injury. Did they lose too much? Because it doesn't feel like they have a ton of beef on the inside to sort of be stout. And there are going to be some teams, Seattle, for instance, that will want to try to shove the ball down their throat. Yeah,
look, I think the thing you look at San Fran from the defensive side of the ball, obviously, change of defensive coordinator. You look at
Sorensen, yep.
Yeah, you look at, bringing Devondre Campbell in to try to, kind of help a little bit. And, again, you've at the Hargrave signing, obviously, Nick Bosa with a full camp. Does he go back to kind of defensive player of the year level? I still think to myself, like, Hufanga off of the injury.
Yep.
Is he going to be ready week one? He's still on PUP, so it feels like that's unlikely. I don't know. I look at this Niners defense. I think they're going to be really good. Do I think they've gone through a couple of different evolutions here? And you still have the best linebacker in football. You still have arguably the best edge rusher in football. Hufanga is an all-pro level safety when he's healthy, but outside corner still feels like they could be better. I think you can attack them a little bit on the outside. I think down the spine, as you mentioned, interior-wise, it felt like a lot of last year. The Niners defense was awesome, but at points, and we saw this a little bit in the Super Bowl and the playoff run, they weren't really getting to the quarterback as much as you felt like they should have been with the amount of names, whether it be Bosa, Armstead, Hargrave, Chase Young, all these different guys. It felt like, man, they only had one sack today. Like, that's weird.
Right.
Like, so they're still awesome. I still think this defense is going to be really good and competitive. Obviously, I'm going to tease it now, but like, I think they may be in a little situation where they're still very much a playoff team, but I'm not sure this division is such a clear-cut just the Niners division. And again, I think this defense will probably be more like the 7th or 8th best unit in the league, which is still awesome. And when I talk about the Jets, I'm going to say very similar things in terms of have they gone through a little bit of an evolution where they're going to be really good, but not like this elite shutdown number one defense in the league. So yeah, good group still with some real serious star power. Obviously they have two guys that could win defensive player of the year. Right. But I just don't know that they're 100% going to be like as good of a unit because Devondre Campbell still have enough left there to replace Greenlaw. I don't know. So I feel good about the Niners defense. I don't feel quite as great as I probably did going into last year or years past.
I think that the Sorensen change is a big one because it gives someone that Kyle Shanahan believes in, and they hired Steve Wilks last year. Wilks had done a great job as the interim head coach in Carolina. A lot of people thought he should have gotten the job. You can argue based on the way the season went, maybe he should have gotten the job. But in San Francisco, there was a clashing, and it happened early and it happened often. Shanahan overruled him at times, which, for a guy who's usually buried his head in the play sheet, that was a little unusual. But again, that was his first year with Wilks. Wilks ends up being a lot of people feel like he was the fall guy. But look, if you're not aligned and you have a team that's built to win now, you better find someone you're aligned with because you're, again, trying to get that defense back. He felt like even though, as I mentioned, fourth in DVOA, that they should have been better, that they should have been getting to the quarterback more. Sorensen will bring a different style and certainly one that Shanahan, I think, will approve, and there'll be less of that. On the offensive side of the ball, we talked about the last episode. You got Trent Williams, or 2 episodes ago. Trent Williams is still holding out, playing golf. When you're ready to seriously pay me the most money for a left tackle that's ever happened, I'm ready to sign. I imagine that will get done before the season starts. And then you have the Brandon Ayuk situation where he remains holding in and they remain they're more and more frustrated with him. And obviously, as we've heard the last week, they've shopped him. And thus far, nothing has been agreed upon with anybody. Patriots, of course, dropping out of the competition when Ayuk basically said, you're not any good and I don't want to go play for your quarterback there either. So aside from that, I'm assuming they get Williams on the field. I don't know what's going to happen with Ayuk, but they drafted Ricky Pearsall in the first round, which surprised some people. Not me. Loved him. Said he should have been a first-round pick. He was. Been dealing with a little bit of a hamstring here in camp. And then Jacob Cowling, the little guy from Arizona. So they brought a lot of speed to that position. Cowling's a 4-4 guy, trying to unlock some different pieces. Got Debo back. You got Kittle back. Kittle coming off a pretty healthy, pretty good year for him. Where do you see the offense going? Christian McCaffrey, I'll add that. McCaffrey with a calf issue, not going to play in the preseason. Expected to be okay for week 1. Running back with a calf issue, a little bit of a concern. But where do you think the offense goes from here?
Yeah, there's a couple different things. Obviously, the biggest news, they lose Sam Darnold. No, I'm just kidding. Look, I think the offensive line should still be good. Again, I think you're going to need Dominic Pooney or of the like to play right away. I liked Pooney a lot coming out.
Yep.
You need Trent Williams to be Trent Williams and play a full year. It's going to be more of a group effort and Kyle scheming stuff up to kind of protect and against any holes there. They lose Mike McGlinchey, obviously. Again, McGlinchey struggled in the Super Bowl and struggled at other points, but he's still a guy with tackle that went out and got paid big money. The weapons are still great without Ayuk, but I do think he's their best pass catcher. As much as Kittle's this kind of jack of all trades, really awesome player, and Juszczyk and McCaffrey can be used in the pass game, and then obviously Debo and and Pearsall, as you mentioned. I do think to some extent, regardless of what you think, like Ayuk last year, I think 37th in targets, first in yards per target. He was extremely efficient. He is an elite level separator. Part of me thinks there's like a small world in which this does eventually get ironed out and he could end up back in San Fran. We've just seen John Lynch is a contract terrorist when it comes to leaving until the last second. Yeah. And he's gotten all these done. It seems like the holdups potentially with Ayuk over in the Steelers, maybe over like this 4th or 5th round pick. It depends on who you ask. It's like, is it they want a 2 and a 4 and a player and the Steelers want to give that up, et cetera. We'll see with him. I think you needed Purdy to take one more jump here. I know he's taken a big leap, and this isn't a beat up on Brock Purdy show at all, but I thought there were some concerning signs at points last year in the playoffs, and it's like you want to have him take just one more step, right? We're like, hey, if we lose Ayuk, can Purdy create 3 or 4 more plays with Pearsall, get on the same page with him? Right. I loved Ricky Pearsall. I think he hasn't really done much yet because he's been hurt or inactive and things like that. And I really think the biggest key to this Niners team, and whether they win 12 or 13 games or they're like a 10-win team, which is kind of more and more I'm leaning of that, like, it's a weird example, but that those Rams teams in like 2003, 2004, where went through some transition, the offense identity changed a little bit. They started to lose some pieces, but they still had the core group that was amazing that went to those, 2 Super Bowls and whatever. They kind of became more of like, what are they going to lean on? And if Deebo Samuel is somewhat close to prime Deebo, they're going to be really damn hard to stop. And if Deebo is missing 8 games, 9 games, now you're asking George Kittle to be like an 8 to 10 target a game guy, and you have to lean on McCaffrey. They got some good injury luck last year and the years. So I'm just slightly worried, like, do they regress a little bit? And are they like more of like a 10 or 11 win team, which is still awesome. They'll still be a playoff team. I think they're going to be really hard to beat. Yeah, really dangerous. But are they more of like the 5th seed in the NFC because they just have some unfortunate injury luck and things like that? That's kind of where I'm leaning a little bit more than 13 wins, home field, et cetera.
I think not having Ayuk is far more damaging than some other people think. I think you brought up some good numbers here, and I think I've been saying this wherever I've appeared on. When things weren't working with the offense, Shanahan's the genius in the offense. It doesn't always work. And when it doesn't always work, and on 3rd and 8, what were they doing? They were dialing up Ayuk, get open against man, and he would make a play off it. He's difficult to bring down. Like, that's a really good player. Some people are fighting back the notion that he's a top 10 receiver. I say he is, and I think it's pretty easy. I wonder here too, and I think I've talked about this, about the idea that, like, has it not happened yet too, just because maybe he's just not totally sure he wants to go? Like, someone's in his ear saying, okay, man, you can go to Pittsburgh and you may like Justin Fields, but like Justin Fields.
Have you watched Justin Fields play quarterback?
It's like same thing, like Cleveland, like, yeah, okay, Deshaun 4 years ago. Yeah. Deshaun now. And again, then there's also he's always been a West Coast guy. Do you want to live in middle America in the Rust Belt? Like, I don't know. I wonder if there's second thoughts there, and he's just hoping that the 49ers sweeten the offer a little bit. I think the initial word was their offer was around $26 million a year. in terms of AAV. Obviously the guaranteed money is more important than the AAV. And maybe he's just hoping that everything comes up a little bit. And then
he's come up to 28.
And then we're in a happy place. And 2 years from now, I'll be bitching again about my contract and we can rework it then again as well. If you still like me and I still like you. All right, let's move on to Arizona. 4-13 last year, but a frisky 4-13, right? They kind of bought into Jonathan Gannon in year one. Now they were 29th in DVOA, which sort of mirrors the 4-13 record. 32nd defensively in DVOA. Their schedule this year, by the way, just out of it, they have the AFC East and the NFC North. Their schedule is brutal. Obviously, in the division, we think is better, more competitive than it's been. So that is a challenge for Gannon and for that team. I think the fascinating part about this team is the offensive side. They draft Marvin Harrison early. It's pretty clear that's the guy we want. We're going to stay. We're not moving this pick for a boatload. He immediately comes in. He's their best wide receiver. But this is a team last year, ran 13 personnel more than anybody in the league. They draft Tip Ryman, the tight end from Illinois in the 6th round, is 270-something pounds, but a freak athlete. So you got Ryman and then Trey McBride, who was, to me, one of the breakout guys of last year. Like, you wondered about Trey. No, and he became a high-volume target, and he became an incredibly reliable target. And they pushed the ball with him down the field. This wasn't the Evan Ingram, 5 yards in the flat. No. This was they opened it up for him. So I'm curious how Harrison's addition impacts McBride, because I think McBride made a case to be one of the best young pass catchers at tight end in the league. And I actually think that now that Harrison's there, I wonder if he gets as many targets, as many looks in the areas of the field that he did last year, and what sort of impact that has on the offense as a whole.
Yeah, look, they're exciting offensively in terms of a nice core there with Harrison Jr. I like Michael Wilson a lot coming out, even Zach Pascal, et cetera, Zay Jones, Greg Dortch, Mike McCagnon, Jets legend.
Yes.
Obviously, McBride, as you mentioned, James Conner, Trey Benson, Michael Carter, formerly of the Jets as well. Like, they got a lot of DJ Dallas. They have a lot of guys. I think this entire season for the Cardinals comes down to one thing and one thing only, and it's Kyler Murray, your quarterback, going forward. And I think there's signs last year that Kyler's still in there. But I don't know if it's in there as consistently as you want it to be for the amount of money you're paying him. And again, I know the money – Ryan Russillo brought up a really good point, and I don't want to steal this point, so I want to make sure I give him credit, not that I'm sure he's listening. But are the Cardinals, as a team organization that traditionally does not spend a ton of money, because they're spending so much money on Kyler, does it give them more of a leash if he's not good this year? Do they just try to run it back again? Do they cut bait earlier than they would? Because, it'll be interesting to see what his kind of leash looks like this year. Again, I thought this team was frisky at points last year, and I thought there was moments where you're like, all right, maybe there's a little something here, and this roster's not great, but they're getting a lot of pieces out of it. They've upgraded, obviously. It comes down to, is Kyler the guy? Like, we know Marvin Harrison, is going to be a really good player, and whether he's the 28th best receiver, the 4th best receiver this year in the league, I have no idea. It's probably pretty dependent on how Kyler Murray does. In theory, this organization right now should have a franchise left tackle in Paris Johnson. They should have a franchise receiver in Marvin Harrison, and they should have Kyler Murray, right? So they have 3 of the 6 most important things you need in an organization to be good. I just think this whole season comes down to, and it's not that I don't want to spend a ton of time on the Cardinals. I just feel like it's pretty basic. It's like they have a franchise tight end potentially. There's some different things to get optimistic. Do you have the coach? Do you have the quarterback? And I frankly don't know the answer to either question.
Yeah, and I'll throw in offensive coordinator Drew Petzing, who's one of the hot names. They had, he did a really nice job last year, and I think if he does a really nice job this year, he's probably a head coach the following season. But you mentioned Kyler, and it comes down to him. And I think the interesting thing is, so you look at him last year, especially in the second half of the season, came back, second half versus Philadelphia, 13 of 14, moving, making plays, ooh. That's the Kyler that was in the running for MVP, whatever that was 3 years ago. Here's the problem. We haven't really seen that guy. He hasn't been consistent. He's not as dynamic anymore. He was, and look, part of that is maybe why he got hurt, right? But he was a dynamic runner of the football, thick, strong guy, capable of running around, buying extra time, standing there, take a hit, make a play. And he hasn't been that guy since a 9-3 start in what could have been an MVP season for him before he got hurt. And now it's This is kind of why he's one of the reasons why I'm a heightist at the position too. I just wonder the size of the quarterback, the beating that you take in the league, having to depend on your legs as much as he does. And now we're seeing maybe a little, like he probably still runs a 4.4. I'm not like, but like a little less explosion or a little bit less willing to do it changes who he is as a player. And I don't know that he's an accurate enough passer at this juncture to be okay with that, right? It was like the Russell Wilson thing. I want to win from the pocket. Well, guess what, Russ? What made you special? What helped you win a Super Bowl? What helped you get to another one was the ability to make plays with your legs. And when your legs started to go, or when you didn't want to do it anymore because you want to play until you're 40-something, which I'm not saying Kyler does, but that was like Russell's thing, he became less of a player. And now we haven't seen that guy for, like, he's not coming back. And I just wonder with Kyler, he's still young enough, but like, is that the best of Kyler Murray already gone? And like you said, they're paying him a lot of money. They're not notoriously an organization that throws out money. Like, I could totally see them being like, well, it was Scannon's fault or it's Petzig's fault. And no, he's coming back next year and like fix it, you know?
Yeah. The one thing with Kyler, and we talked about, Herbert a little bit in this way of these guys that come in and they're really good right away. And, what's the next step? And obviously Herbert and Kyler are very different situations. But the one thing I worry a little bit about with Kyler is just a lot of the questions I felt like when he got extended, there was obviously the infamous how much film you have to watch, extra study time and stuff. And again, I don't want to beat up on him because I'm not in that building and I couldn't tell you for a fact whether he's really studying a lot or he's not, or he works out really hard in the offseason or he doesn't. I will tell you his best ever season was probably his rookie year. And if it wasn't his rookie year, it was his second year in 2020 during the COVID years. I know they were good in 2021, but it fell apart near the end, obviously, with the D-Hop stuff and whatever. And then 2022 was pretty average at best, and everything was down numbers-wise. Then 2023, again, coming back from the knee, completion percentage is, by far the lowest it's been since his rookie year. Touchdown interceptions, he's kind of always been a 2-touchdown to an interception type of guy. Like, the numbers don't totally, like the Herbert numbers we talked about last episode, we're beating up on him a little bit for last year and stuff. 2 or 3 years ago, he's done for 5,000 yards, 40 touchdowns. Kyler's best year was 24 touchdowns, 10 picks, 3,700 yards. Good year, really good year. If you're a Jets fan or Pats fan right now, you take that, those numbers in a heartbeat, or the Raiders or, any of these teams. Kyler's a big money quarterback and he's going to be judged on that. And I think, again, this year is Gannon, Kyler, some of these guys. And if you don't get answers there, I think you leave really frustrated as a Cardinals fan. If you leave this year as a Cardinals fan saying, hey, we were 6-11, but like Kyler looked much more like the guy, and 1 or 2 more pieces on the offensive line, 1 or 2 pieces on that defense, the Niners are going to regress in 2025, and the Rams, Stafford's old, and he's over the hill, and like, hey man, Seattle doesn't have a quarterback. We're gonna go for this division, similar to a couple of years ago. You feel much better than, dude, we don't have a quarterback.
Right.
We don't have a head coach. Who wants this job? Like, that's you don't want to be leaving the year like that. So I know it's simplistic, but they're one of the few teams where it's truly, do we have the quarterback? Do we have the coach? Yes or no?
Get in on the excitement and win up to $100 cash. With PrizePicks, you can turn $10 into $1,000 while watching Team USA rack up the gold medals this summer. You can make PrizePick lineups of players across basketball, soccer, tennis, golf, and more in as little as 60 seconds. Just pick more or less than 2 to 6 stat projections, and you're locked in. If you're looking for promotions, PrizePicks has got you covered every week. From lowering select player stats projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, or getting entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. Mike, I know you like to dabble in these apps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, hey, look, as we know, we talked about this. You're a Yankee fan. I'm a Red Sox fan. It's easy to be a Red Sox fan now that I don't have to cover them, because covering them was a pain in the butt. I'm enjoying this playoff push, and I have a love affair with Rafael Devers. So, like, I look at his numbers every day. Download the PrizePick app today. Use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. It's free money. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. I think you have the quarterback and the coach in LA with the Rams. Although, as you mentioned, the quarterback is older and has dealt with his fair share of injuries. They were 10-7 last year, 7th offensively in DVOA, 22nd defensively, 17th overall. But I have to start not a McVay, not with Stafford. I have to start with no Aaron Donald. The best defensive player of the last whatever, one of the best defensive players ever, some people will say. Like, he's not there. And their defense was pretty good last year, even though the numbers don't indicate necessarily. But how do you make up for that loss? They draft Jared Verse and Brandon Fisk in the first 2 rounds. Like both those guys, Fisk, obviously, I think you said was one of your sleeper picks this year, one of your under-the-radar guys. Are they going to be good enough to complement what is clearly an offense-first football team?
Here must probably be one of my hotter takes, I guess, on the show when we do these previews. I think the Rams are winning the division, and I think they are.
Mark it down.
Yeah.
What was it? What time was that?
42.
Yeah.
I think they're winning the division. I think they're a team that is going to be right up there competing for the NFC title. I just think that last year was such a preview. That playoff game, and there's reasons to be concerned about the Rams, no doubt, right? Like you mentioned, no Aaron Donald. Frankly, McVay in some of these big games, there's some true concern there. And I know he went on Barstool BMT and he told Big Cat to shut the F up about the whole punting thing and kicking and all that stuff. That's all great. But like,
right.
No defense in the league has been able to and will be able to, I think, consistently shut down a team with Puka, Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams. You know, that's a legit trio that could go up there with any trio in the league. And they've got one of the top 6 or 7 quarterbacks, top 3 or 4 offensive minds in the league. And we don't talk enough about, you know, they've really invested in this offensive line. And I mean, like 3 starters are out right now. And again, the Rams are going to come down to health of the quarterback and health of this offense, because at the end of the day, that's what's driven them when they've been really good, winning a title, going to NFC title games. That's what's happened. And when guys get hurt, obviously we've seen what, you know, it can crater with any team, but Steve Avila was awesome. You know, they've added so much to this offensive line that, you know, Kevin Dotson, et cetera, like it feels like if they keep Stafford upright, they could go 35, 40 points a game with anybody. And maybe they won't get to that level, but like they could be the best offense in the league from that perspective. Defensively, they have these nice core young pieces. It's going to be by committee. The one thing I am concerned about, as you mentioned, no Raheem Morris on top of no Aaron Donald. And Raheem Morris is a guy that got a lot of positive reviews. He obviously goes down, and we'll talk about him with the Atlanta job. But, you know, the Rams got the AFC East, and, you know, what do those games look like? You know, I have Jets Rams circled on my calendar right before Christmas. Is that 2 teams competing for division titles? So they should be really awesome. I think them and the Niners are the class of this division. I think they're 2 of the 4 or 5 best teams in the conference. I just feel like they beat up on each other, and that's why sometimes the records don't look as pretty. But that Lions game sticks with me. It feels like they were a year early with this group, and like they probably should have won that game. And that's in Detroit in this hostile environment. And you're like, damn, man, like another year of Puka, like with McVay, and all of a sudden Cooper Kupp really playing, and Kyron fresh legs, and Stafford fully healthy without, you know, 700 elbow injuries, whatever.
Right.
I don't, you know, I really like them on paper. They're exciting, and I think they're going to be really fun to watch at a minimum this year.
It's interesting, right? Because they're like a big 11 personnel team, and they didn't really necessarily add a third receiver, you know, sort of by committee. Demarcus Robinson showed some things to them last year. Maybe he's that third guy, but they figure with Cooper Kupp and Nakua, if they're on the field at the same time, which they weren't a ton last year, then we're in a pretty good place to begin with. What I would say that's interesting to me, and you sort of mentioned it, like leaning more into being a physical football team, and they do it with the offensive line, the way they reshaped it and how massive they are in the interior, right? Bunch of 330, 40-pound dudes.
Yeah, don't they feel like a little similar to Kansas City, where they were like, we are going to be really, really physical in the interior, better than anybody in the league. Yeah,
it's again, this is sort of like the evolution of McVay as a coach and the way he's doing offense. And so they go sign Colby Parkinson in free agency, 3 years, $22 million at tight end, which is more money than you would give someone who you're just like, oh, well, Higbee's hurt. He'll be back some point during the year. I don't think you're going to that extent with Parkinson unless you're thinking to yourself, we're going to do a lot of 2 tight end stuff. When Higbee comes back, you're going to see those 2 guys, Cooper and Nakua, and then let's, you know, like, all right, now how will teams adapt to us and bring that physicality? And like Detroit's an obvious team where, you know, we're going to bite your kneecaps, the grit, the whole thing. Like they want to play physical football with you. And I think the Rams kind of saying, all right, maybe we're a little bit overmatched in that department, or maybe we're a little bit light in that department, and we're not going to be light going forward. So, to me, they're a fascinating study on how they evolve offensively here with McVay. Nick Caley, who probably should have been the offensive coordinator in New England. They didn't want to pay him. He stays out there. He's the tight ends coach there. They're bringing some juice there. There's a great story in the Athletic about sort of that vibe that they've got going there in the tight end room in particular. And just they're going to be an interesting team to watch. And I will say defensively, they are really young, but then they added guys
like talent there.
Yeah, they added Cam
Curl.
Tre'Davious White, which look, Tre'Davious, it's been like 4 years, right? He's had a ton of injuries, a lot of bad luck. But that's a flyer. The way they structured his contract, which you look at it and go, oh, they're paying him how much? Dude, he's got to pretty much play to get the money. So it's Darius Williams, who I think is a really good cover corner. They brought in some good pieces to add to the young core. I mean, that draft last year, they just hammered the draft. Now, if they can add that and then and it's Braden Fisk. I always want to throw the N in there instead of Brandon Fisk. Braden Fisk in the interior, I don't know. That again, to me, that looks like a team that their defense is better than it appeared last year. And I think at points they were good last year, but I think it should take a step forward this year.
Yeah, they're better as a unit this year. They just don't have
Aaron Donald.
They don't have Aaron Donald. The one thing you wonder with the Rams, and I think we feel this way about a bunch of different teams, is I don't know. I just look at them and I feel like there's a few teams that at the deadline we know are going to be willing to spend. If the Rams feel like they're one piece away, we've seen them go get Jalen Ramsey. We've seen them, offer multiple ones for Brian Burns, and we've seen them do a lot of these things. They start out 7-3, and they're like 6-2, whatever the numbers add up to. And player X is on the market. Matt Judon doesn't get moved, and all of a sudden Matt Judon's there, and it's like Matt Judon for a 2, take it or leave it. He's going to play out the year. And they're like, hey, man, we had Matt Judon in this defense, and we feel like we can go win the conference. They'll go do it. So I just want to mention that because I think there's very few teams in the league that kind of feel like they've shown their hand, they'll do it. The Rams are very much one of them. Just keep an eye on.
It's a great point. Sean's relationship with Belichick, that was a Belichick thing for all those years. Aqib Talib, our cornerbacks aren't very good. We'll give up 2 4s for Aqib Talib. Turns out to be a really good deal that pushes that defense forward. So I like teams that are willing to invest in season and be aggressive. Now you predicted the Rams, and I kind of went out of order. The Rams were supposed to be the last team here. I jumped the gun. Seattle's the other team in this division, 9-8, middle of the road DVOA team, 16th overall, 12th offensively, 28th defensively. Moving on from the legend that is Pete Carroll. That was the same 24-hour period where Nick Saban retires, Bill Belichick and the Patriots mutually parted. Funny, haha. So they've been a little bit of a team in limbo, and they hire Mike McDonald. So you go from one of the oldest coaches, if not the oldest coach in the league, to one of the youngest, if not the youngest coach in the league. I forget the numbers now, but he is there because Sean McVay is in the division and Kyle Shanahan is in the division. And okay, how do we beat those teams? Well, you either join them offensively and go that route, or you find the guy who did an incredible job with Baltimore last year against teams like this and schemes like this, including the 49ers, including the Dolphins, and you hire him and you say, it's yours. Now, he doesn't have all his personnel yet. They were a big body team in Baltimore. I think I read somewhere the defensive line on average is 32 pounds lighter across the board than what he had in Baltimore that he has in Seattle. But also maybe there's going to take a little time to get his imprint on the team in that regard. Or maybe he says, I like what we've got here and I'll make it work, because he's very adaptable. And I am fascinated that we get that matchup, that coaching matchup. It's a little nerdy, but the McVay-Shanahan versus the McDonald defense 4 times a year is pretty intriguing. And you're intrigued by what the Rams are going to do. I'm really fascinated by how this plays out. They, to me, are the most interesting team in the division because I think this guy's really bright, and I think he has a chance to shake things up there where maybe it had gotten a little stale, and now he's coming in with a new attitude and a new defense, and let's go. Let's see it.
Yeah, I like Seattle a lot. Like, if you told me there's 3 AFC East and 3 NFC West playoff teams, would not be shocked. I think this division and the way Seattle's season will look is, what Geno do you get And I don't mean that Geno was bad by any means last year. And no, I like Geno a lot. Like, this is nothing to do with, like, not saying he's not good, but he's not in the elite tier, in my opinion. And it's just what quarterback play you're going to get, because objectively, you probably have the third or fourth best quarterback in the division, and he's still comparable. And he can get you to the playoffs, and we've seen it. You wonder what that's going to look like, because the talent on the offensive side of the ball is good. Obviously, as we know, and DK and Lockett's getting up there, but, can still give you something. Is JSN going to take that next step? And Kenneth Walker, I don't love the tight end room. I think it's fine. I think Noah Fant and Pharaoh Brown are who they are. They're fine. Offensive line's a little concerning to me. I think it's been concerning for a while. They obviously have the two tackles in Cross and Lucas, and they've added back George Fant and Lincoln Tomlinson, Jets legends. They signed Connor Williams, which I really do like as a signing. But again, he's a guy coming off an injury. There's just a lot of – I need to see it. I need question marks on the offensive line. And then defensively, you mentioned from just a pure scheme perspective, they should be awesome. Like, they should just be really good, really well coached, really well disciplined. It might take 4, 6, 8 weeks, but that last, the back half of the year, we should start to see this defense really fly around. The cornerback play should be awesome with Witherspoon. I think Tariq Woolen's a guy who I'm really intrigued by, because rookie year, very feast or famine.
Yep.
Was awesome. There was the Sauce versus Woolen debates and who's better and these different things. Tariq Woolen got benched last year. Yeah. And, you just wonder, like, did the league maybe figure him out a little bit and say, like, hey, this guy's going to try to jump every single route. This is who he is. He's a long, fast corner, but X, Y, and Z. I'm just curious what that's going to look like, because Witherspoon showed a ton, obviously, as a rookie. Julian Love got the big extension, a guy that, showed well. They've made some investments in, like, Leonard Williams again, Shannon Nwosu. And do they get enough? They obviously Byron Murphy now, but I just wonder, like, can this defense be good enough to keep them in a lot of games and then say, hey, DK, like, I think back to that Cowboys-Seahawks game last year where it was like they could move the ball at ease, and it's like the defense couldn't stop anybody. And now the defense should stop people. Can they stay healthy up front and protect Geno? They could be competitive. I think they're probably still a 9-win team, 8-9-win team. And then next year they're a team where, like, again, 1 or 2 additions here or there. Mike McDonald in year 2, do they take the 11-win leap? I kind of just feel like it's Rams, Niners, Seahawks, and then a big gap, and then the Cardinals right now.
Yeah, and Geno's been a little nicked up in camp, sore. They traded for Sam Howell.
His body just feels like it's gotten beat up the last couple of years a little bit. It's a lot of nicks and bruises that kind of keep him out a little bit longer than you would expect.
Yeah, and I mean, he's been around a long time. Like, didn't play.
Geno's 34, 33.
I know. Yeah, it happens. Trust me, it happens quick. You know what I wrote down about them just as I was, and Ryan Grubb, by the way, the offensive coordinator who comes over from the University of Washington. You watch college football the last couple of years, watching, and granted they had Penix and why am I drawing a blank on my guy Roma Dunze, like Jalen Polk. So they had great talent, but the scheme was so varied and just cool to watch. And like, so I'm interested to see how does he sprinkle that in as well, because it's different than what you're used to. He's not. I don't know that he falls under any tree. It might be his own tree. But what I wrote down for them when I was looking at the defense in particular is like what Mike likes to do, right? And it's all about confusion. Like what are they in? What are they doing? How are they doing it? How do they even get there? And then will they do it again? And like that was the thing. Like they went from Wink Martindale, who blitzes everybody coming off the bus, to McDonald, right? Who I think they were like 20-something percent, 22%, which, Wink was up around 40%. Simulated pressures, though, all over the joint and like just playing games. And like quarterbacks didn't trust what they saw, and it leads to mistakes, uncertainty. You wait that half second. I got a pass breakup instead of a completion. You don't get the touchdown because you don't throw it on whatever it is. Like, even if he doesn't have the exact talent that he wants there yet, if he has smart players, they should be able to do some of that and sort of mask the deficiencies talent-wise. Entirely new linebackers, essentially, right? Jerome Baker, Terrell Dotson are the two guys they brought in free agency. You mentioned drafting Byron Murphy, who's probably going to move around on the offensive line. I mean, on the defensive line a little bit. And Witherspoon is one of my favorite. Like, I want him and Gonzalez. I like both of them coming out. I thought the physicality of Witherspoon was obviously something that Gonzalez doesn't have in his game and won't. And you saw that. They lined him up in a bunch of different places, and he was just, when he got rolling, he was just awesome to watch. Physical guy. So I love the aggression that we're going to see there. And I just am going to enjoy watching quarterbacks, including guys who, have Shanahan and McVay coaching them up, being like, what the hell just happened? I threw that ball there, and what? My guy, he was double covered? How'd that happen? Like, I'm really intrigued to see if McDonald can carry over the success in Baltimore to Seattle.
Yeah, I just think I wanted one more point on the Geno thing. Completion percentage dropped over 5% last year. Missed 2 games, but obviously 700 less yards, 10 less touchdowns, pretty much the same amount of interceptions. Yards per attempt were down, yards per game, quarterback rating, QBR, sacks were down. But so you just wonder, can Geno get back to a little bit more of the guy that got them to 9-8 than, when they were, last year, I think he's a starter. He was 7-8, I believe, or 8-7 as a starter last year, 9-8 the year before. So, yeah, can they get more 2022 than 2023 Geno, stay healthy and solid-ish up front on the offensive line, and then let McDonald, as you mentioned, do what he's going to do. He's one of the most talented minds right now in football, and it's going to be really cool, looking at, as you mentioned, McVay and Kyle, getting 4 times a year against McDonald, and then, we'll get to see a bunch of other cool matchups, and McDaniels versus, McDonald at one point this year. We'll get to see, Josh Allen up against that defense amongst others. So this division will be awesome as it usually is. I think ending with this, I just think it's a division that we talked about the AFC. It's like this: who is going to slip up, against Arizona in a sense, and who's going to drop that random game, at Arizona week 15. And it's like, geez, man, like you couldn't lose that game. That could be the difference in the division. One note just to make quickly, Sean Payton just announced Jarrett Stidham will start this weekend, for the Broncos, and Bo Nix will start the following week. Not great news for our boy Zach Wilson, but that's just some quarterback news that we talked about on last episode.
Zach feels like he's destined to be on the practice squad, which, again, if that's
CFL, baby, CFL.
If that's how you have to rebuild it, or if that's how you have to be around for 10 years, it's not a bad living to make. Stidham has obviously been around for quite a bit now, as pretty much primarily just the backup guy. All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of the All 32 pod. Will with the big call. It's the Rams trumping the 49ers. I would say Seattle 3, Arizona 4, but I would still have San Francisco ahead of the Rams in this division. But this is going to be a fun division to watch. We will be back again next week. Again, we're still sort of ironing out our schedule. We're sort of morphing it here as we go through training camps and games on Thursdays and those sorts of things. But I think eventually it'll be a Monday, Friday thing during the regular season. We appreciate those of you who have liked, subscribed, and left reviews. Tell your friends to do the same thing. If you haven't done that yet and you've listened and you made it to this point, please do it again. We really appreciate it. It allows this thing to grow the way we want it to, and to bring it to you in the best way possible. So thank you for joining us. We will see you again next week. We're out.